Works. We are live. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Proud to Be an American podcast, now live on StreamYard. So we're going to take all that technical difficulty crap, throw it out the window. We're starting a new leaf, episode 11, Patriotism Defined. Today we've got Justin Cramer, and I'm going to call this episode Fixin' Trucks to Livin' in the Suck. So my key, big thing, patriotism defined. Merriam-Webster dictionary states love or devotion for one's country. And a patriot is a person who vigorously supports their country and is prepared to defend it against enemies or detractors. Now, this show is hosted by Killfoot Clothing. We provide the threads of patriotism, 100% veteran employer, 100% made in the United States, and we are 100% veteran owned and operated. We believe if you've got a flag on your shirt, that shirt should be made in the USA, period. All right, so introduction. Who am I? Whiskey 6, a.k.a. Sergeant Brent Walker, retired father, husband, combat wounded veteran, entrepreneur, outdoorsman, biker, and patriot. Yeah, America, baby. So if you're listening in, say hi. Make sure you give us some questions for Justin. If you are leaving comments with this new system with StreamYard, make sure that as you're doing so, you got to enable StreamYard to work with your Facebook to let you put in your name. Liz is already squared away. Thank you, Liz. Welcome. And if you're watching afterwards, make sure you do hashtag replay to let us know that you're watching it after the fact so we can know that people are still watching us. And make sure you go to YouTube. I'm going to start being a little bit better, regular with updating the stuff on YouTube. We've had technical difficulties with the last 2 episodes, so I kind of scrapped those. I'm sorry to those guys. I'm going to bring them back on. But now that we have this new technology, wonderful operability, and eliminating all the technical difficulties, we're going to be putting those on YouTube regularly. So make sure you check out Proud to Be an American podcast on YouTube. We're going to have the videos edited, add in some little lickies and chewies after the fact. Some little GoPro videos that we film with some of the reviews that we're going to be bringing up. So make sure you go there, hit the subscribe button, and click the little bell down in the corner, which enables you to let you know whenever we have a new episode. So today we have Justin Cramer. He left the Marines in 2018 after 12 years. So that's almost double my career in the Army. Initially came in open contract and was a mechanic before changing jobs and becoming a forward observer and JTAC. He had deployments including 1 time in Operation Iraqi Freedom, 2 times Operation Enduring Freedom, and 2 MEU deployments, which we'll let him talk about that because I don't know what that is off the top of my head. I'm all screwed up here. Currently enrolled at San Diego State University, and graduates in the spring with a degree in journalism and advertising. He recently hit 100 episodes on his podcast, and now we're going to bring him in to talk about that. Former Action Guys podcast host, Justin Cramer. Welcome, brother.
Hello. How are you?
Good.
Thanks for having me on, man.
Thanks for coming. We've got 8 people watching. See this
what's up, everybody?
New system. It's great. I love this. This is what I love about live. We've got people live interacting. Liz is here, and Facebook user.
Live's the way to go. Live's the way to go. I'm gonna have to check out this program and see if it's something I want to use for my podcast. Because it's one of those things where you always have to be trying out new technologies and stuff like that to kind of stay ahead of the game and also provide the best quality kind of show.
Exactly, and that's a big thing. We do these kind of shows for us a little bit. I like doing this so I can talk about different things and bring other people onto the show and talk about their stuff. But, like you said, the ultimate thing is, your viewers and what they want to see and bringing stuff out. So, everyone, once again, if you're leaving comments, if you've got questions for Justin or myself, make sure you enable StreamYard to let us see what your name is. We got 1 Facebook user, but my brother Ortega.
Awesome.
There we go. Yeah. I love it. All right.
See you guys. Feel free to ask me any questions. I'll start with what MEU deployment is. So that's we call it a MU in the Marine Corps. It's called Marine Expeditionary Unit.
There we go.
And that's a think of a brigade size, I guess, for the Army. It'd be for us for a regimental size command with a O6, a full bird colonel leading it. And that's the Marine detachment that goes on the Navy ships and then goes and floats around. So it's like 15 or 1,700 Marines to go floating around the world just waiting for the call to get, put ashore. An example of when that actually occurred was after September 11th. There was a Marine, a MEU, that was in Australia on Liberty. They were on a port call. They've been at sea for a while, so they've been on a port call, and they got recalled from their Liberty time in Australia to steam over to Afghanistan. And I want to say that the MEU went into Afghanistan in December of 2001, and they were one of the first units there.
Wow. Yeah, I know U.S. Army Special Forces guys dropped in real quick shortly thereafter into Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. So we'll have to look that up after the fact. Maybe somebody can look that up while we're waiting. Who was the first? Who was CIA. The first?
I think it's CIA.
CIA. They were already there.
There's a really good book called Jawbreaker that the gentleman that ran the CIA operations right after September 11th into Afghanistan. He has two books. I can't remember what the other one's called, but one of them is called Jawbreaker, and it's actually really interesting how he talks about going in and working with the Northern Alliance and trying to get like weapons and stuff in there so they can start fighting the Taliban fighters and stuff. It's a really good book.
That's pretty cool. So, I'll have to check that out. I'm getting big into reading lately. I talk about it the last couple podcasts too. Well, not reading because I cannot read anymore. I start reading a book and I start falling asleep. My ADHD starts going crazy and I got to get up and start moving around. So
that's one of my favorite ways to go to sleep, though, is to read a book while I'm
down, and it used to be my big deployment go-to. When I was on deployment, I used to read like crazy, but for some reason, after I got blown up, my brain just got rewired for some reason, and now I got to go all the time. And on top of that, I can't process stuff as easily as I used to. So I'll just with my phone, between podcasts and audiobooks, it has definitely helped me out quite a bit. Especially when I'm going on hikes.
Yeah, for sure.
I just got back from a 4-mile hike this morning, rucking, and it's like my go-to thing now. Besides throttle therapy on my motorcycle.
There you go.
Getting out in the woods on the trail with my ruck and just going. It's good stuff.
It is. I had a group of me and a group of buddies that were over at Anglico, which is Air Naval Gunfire Liaison Company, one of the units I was with in the Marine Corps. Once we all three got out, we kind of linked up. I was like, hey, we should go and do this like cool hike together. We were hoping to go to Havasu Falls. But you have to when they open those permits, you have to be on the website to select that permit right then. And so we didn't get it. And we ended up going to Utah to Zion National Park and doing the Zion Traverse, which is like 40 something miles over I think we did it in 4 days. It's a great time.
That's wicked.
Everybody talks about Angel's Landing, but you start on the other side of Zion and you come down and you actually you do the entire park, and when you're coming down, you're actually looking down at the people climbing up on Angel's Landing. Like your Angel's Landing is below you. So it's kind of funny, seeing all those people struggling to get there, but you came the back way, 40 miles,
That's wicked.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah,
it's good stuff.
I've got a buddy local to me here. He was Anglico for a while. Oh, cool. He's going to be doing the Wilderness 100 coming up. I wish I had more time. I'd go and do it with him, but that's the kind of random crazy shit that we do around here. I do Tough Rock 26.2. I've done that for 2 years now. If you're ever interested, come out, do it with me.
Check it out.
It's a great time. It's on the Boston. Well, it used to be on the Boston Marathon course. It's the day before the Boston Marathon, and
that'd be cool.
It's a good time. They do it now. I think it's even cooler. They do it in the Minuteman National Park. So in
nice.
Concord, Mass, and the whole vibe behind it is so wicked because here you are. It's a real military heavy thing. Yeah. It benefits the Military Friends Foundation. And so you've got over 1,000 people, 90% of them there are all former military active, veterans. Mm-hmm. And here you are marching through Minuteman National Park, literally the shot heard around the world, the beginning of the American Revolution.
It's crazy.
The Battle of Lexington and Concord right there. And you've got guys marching around, fifing drums, all dressed up like old Minutemen dudes. It's a wicked time. Last year we couldn't do it because of COVID. We did it local here on a trail that we've got, but still a good time.
That's pretty legit. I've never really spent any time up in the Northeast. The farthest, like Northeast, I guess I've gone is up in Virginia around Little Creek, Dam Neck area.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did do some training up there. But other than that, like I didn't really get to. I think I saw like Classic Williamsburg or some shit that's up in Virginia, but I didn't really see much else. I do want to get up and see like Boston and New York and all these like historical places. It's definitely something I'm into. Is like traveling around and like kind of better fully appreciate the American history that we surround ourselves with or that we're surrounded by.
Yeah. That's the one great thing about up here. Everybody talks about us Yanks up here, but you know what? We've got a lot of really crazy history, back to, Plymouth Rock.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's super
wicked.
interesting. It's, I'm in school right now, like you said in the intro. I'm at San Diego State University, and I run into students all the time that are like, well, the U.S. has no culture. We have, there's no culture here. I wish we were like these other countries. And I'm like, where have you been? Like, what have you experienced? Because you're just regurgitating what other people are telling you. There's so much culture in this country, and we're all part of it. And it's like, to say that there's no culture, I think is kind of a gross misunderstanding of, I don't know, America, because there's just a lot of stuff that's happening and things to do and things to see and history and it's not all bad. I know that bringing up bad history is the thing to do nowadays, but it's not all bad history. There's a lot of good stuff that happened and a lot of people that, did crazy things that made it possible for us to do the things that we can do today.
And we're such a melting pot too.
Yeah, sure.
Everybody says we don't have culture. Well, when it comes down to it, we are made up of,
Everybody.
Cultures of the world. You name someone in the world and they live here and they have a history here and they have done something, to contribute to our nation. And that's a cool thing, like Statue of Liberty says, give us your tired, give us your poor. And that mentality throughout the last couple hundred years is what has made us up.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's good stuff. That's why, people join the military and stuff still, is to kind of defend that ability for the country to operate in the way it does. It may not always work out that way. You may find yourself defending yourself from getting too many barracks duties or something like that. But,
Yeah, I definitely got my expert mopping badge.
Yeah, everyone does when you're a junior guy.
Yeah.
And I joined when I was 22, so it was a little different because I was older. My sergeant was the same age as me. Actually, I think I was older than my sergeant when I showed up, and I was a PFC, and he didn't really care to hear my opinion, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
And, being older with some life experience, I had lived on my own for 4 years, and that kind of experience, gave me, like I said, life experience. But when I joined, they would ask me to do some stuff that it's just dumb. Like, I remember when I first joined, they're like, are you going to live in military housing or out in town? Because I was married at the time. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to live in base housing or whatever. And they're like, all right, well, once you move in, if you need furniture and stuff, make sure you take one of your NCOs to go buy furniture with you. And I'm like, no offense, Sergeant, but I'm older than you and all my corporals. Like, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
They just didn't really like that very much. It is what it is, though.
It's weird how that works out, though, because I had it both ways. When I came in basic, I was 18 years old, 2 weeks after graduating. But then, I was on the flip side of it. Here I am as a 21-year-old NCO. I made my E5 in like 2 years. It was pretty quick. And then I get guys who are like 30 years old as my private specialists. And it's like, what am I supposed to do with this? And you get some guys that are squared away. And then you also get guys on the other side of the coin where, you do have to tell them how to do everything.
Well, the things, it's like business is business. Like when you come to work, you're obviously the better expert at it. You've been doing it for 2 years longer than the junior Marine.
Exactly.
However, it's like, but people should also look at this person as a tool to be utilized with, someone that has this life experience and information that you may not have, like leverage the knowledge and stuff that they got from living in the real world for a few years on their own or however long.
Exactly. Because they've got life experience. They might not have, all of that military knowledge and technical knowledge as far as their job goes, but they've, some of these guys have lived, 5-10 years longer than you have in the real world.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And, for me, I was pretty butthurt because I was a senior in high school when September 11th happened, and I went to the recruiter that week. Like, me and a group of my friends went to the recruiter that week, and that was my plan. I'd always wanted to join the military. My dad was in the Army, so it was like, he was in Desert Storm and stuff like that. So if anyone in my family was surprised that I joined the military, I don't know why, because it's like we literally followed my dad in the Army and we watched Army movies and, all that kind of stuff. In high school, I read Carlos Hathcock's Marine Sniper, and that's what made me go, oh, shit, I'm going to join the Marine Corps. I'm going to join the Marine Corps and become a sniper. I'm going to do all this cool stuff. And I was planning on doing it right after high school, but I got arrested my senior year for having weed on me. And so I got delayed, and it ended up my buddy that I was supposed to go to boot camp with was leaving for boot camp, and so we threw a party for him, and then I got arrested again, and I'm like, God damn it. And so that's why it took me, I actually didn't get to join until 2006 because I had to like go through my probationary periods and stupid stuff like that. And had the military not been plussing up because of the wars, both of the wars happening, I probably wouldn't have been able to come in because I had a shit ton of waivers, or at least in the Marine Corps. Because, a lot of people don't realize the Air Force is the hardest branch to get into, and the Marine Corps is the second hardest branch to get into. Like, they don't accept a lot of waivers. So I just got kind of lucky that I was in that window where they needed people, and got in. Like you mentioned in the intro, I came in open contract like an idiot. I didn't want to. I was kind of between a rock and a hard place because I thought I was in infantry contract, and when I got down to MEPS to go to boot camp, the next day, the guy at MEPS was like, so what job do you want to do? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I thought I was infantry. And he's like, no, man, that's full. I mean, you can do it, but you got to wait like 3 months. And at this time, I had just found out, my now ex-wife was pregnant. I had quit my job already. I had moved out of my apartment, because I was getting ready to go to boot camp. So I had all this. I sold my car because I was like, well, I don't need that thing anymore. And I'm like, well, fuck, I can't wait 3 more months. I just got rid of like my whole way of living. So he was like, go open contract, or you can do admin or supply. And I'm like, dude, fuck that. Like, I don't want to do any of that. That just sounds like garbage. And I know open contract's a bad idea. I was like, I'll become a cook or a fucking mechanic. That's exactly what I said. And he's like, well, if you want to ship today, you got to pick one of these jobs or you got to go open contract. And he's like, that's the best way you're going to go to infantry, which is literally the worst advice. It's not the best way to get to the infantry. So I went open contract, finished boot camp, went to, after in the Marine Corps, you go to boot camp for 13 weeks. Then you go to MCT, which is Marine Combat Training, where you actually do weapons handling, like machine gun ranges and stuff like that. You don't do any of that in boot camp. And at the end of MCT is when they tell you officially what your MOS is and where you're going to school at. For me, when I left boot camp, they tell you also, they're like, hey, open contract people, come over here. This is going to be your MOS. And they initially said I was going to be a geographic intelligence specialist, which is like making maps or some shit.
Well, I've never even heard of that before.
Yeah, I think it's like I think it's just a map making. It's an intel job, so I'm pretty sure it's just map making stuff, which I was like, you know what, this isn't what I wanted, but I'll come out of if I decide to do 4 years, I'll get out and have a TS clearance. I could probably leverage that to, get a good job when I get out. And so that's what I had planned on. I was like looking stuff up and stuff like that. Then I go to MCT and I get to MCT and they read off my MOS. They're like, Cramer, so-and-so, 3521, Camp Johnson, North Carolina. I'm like, the fuck's a 3521? And they're motor T mechanic. And I'm like, oh, what? Like, this sucks, And one of my buddies who was he was also open contract, and they told him in boot camp that he was going to be a tanker. He also got switched from that job to being a mechanic. And I'm like, oh, man, we just got screwed.
That's wild.
Yeah, and then when I got to finish MOS school, I was like, well, maybe I'll get sent to an infantry unit and I'll get to do something cool. And that's not what happened either. at the end, they're like, Cramer, so-and-so, you're going to 2nd Maintenance Battalion, 2nd Marine Logistics Group. That's the worst fucking unit in the entire Marine Corps. Like, the staff sergeant laughed. I'm like, fuck, man, like, this sucks. And it sucked, man. It was like working in a factory for a little while. You know, you just come in, turn wrenches all day, pull in Humvee motors and transfer cases and all that shit. And I did that for 3 years, and I was in Iraq in 2009 on my first deployment, and I was a mechanic, and I was a TQ. There was nothing going on. TQ is a pretty, you know, decent size. It's not Al-Assad, but it's got a PX and a chow hall and stuff like that. And the opportunity came up to re-enlist, and I was like, look, I'm either going to do something cool or I'm getting out. You know, I'm not staying in this job. And they're like, hey, the monitors, the guys that's in charge of that are going to be here on the base here in a couple of days. So you're going to go talk to them directly. And I'm like, all right, cool. And I knew I had a friend who's also a mechanic, and he had went over to MARSOC, the Marine Special Operations Command, which is, you now hear them called the Raider Regiment. He went over to MARSOC and as a mechanic and got to go to jump school, got to go on a deployment and support a MARSOC team and a SF team, you know, and because you're on a team like that, he was like, I wouldn't call him an enabler. He was support personnel. However, because it's a small team, he was going out on all the missions. He was a machine gunner, you know, for blocking positions. He was doing different stuff that was really cool. And he got to go to like a bunch of schools I wanted to do. So when I put in my lat move package, I put in for fire support man, the 0861. And they're like, hey man, you didn't get it. You know, we ran out of boat spaces, which is the allotment for the year, you know, the amount of spaces they have. They're like, we ran out of boat spaces. What else do you want to do? And I was like, well, unless you can send me to this unit, I'm like, look this dude's name up and tell me exactly where he's at, because that's where I'll go as a mechanic. Other than that, I'm not going to do it. And they're like, all right, cool, come in the next day and we'll sign your paperwork. And I'm like, all right. And I come in the next day and my career planner's like, hey man, I got some bad news. He's like, you're not going to MARSOC anymore. And I'm like, oh really? Like, or I was like, what the fuck? You know, like, fuck it, I'm getting out. And he's like, well, you want to hear the good news? You know, you got your other MOS. And so I became a fire support man. I came back from Iraq, went to 2nd Battalion, 10th Marines, which is artillery unit out of Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. And hit the ground running. You know, I was a sergeant. I got promoted kind of quick. And I got there not knowing anything. You know, they had to teach me how to plot on a map and shit like that, because it's not something you do when you're turning wrenches all day. And, you know.
Yeah, like back to basic shit.
And I got lucky and fell under probably one of the best fire support Marines that was in the Marine Corps at the time. And so I got to learn under him. And I was there for probably a year or so, and got tapped for my first deployment, first deployment as a fire support man, which was to Marja, Afghanistan, with 3rd Battalion, 6th Marines in 2011. This was not their 2010 deployment where they did the clear of Marja. This was the following year they came back, and I was there. And you know, it was what you. I don't know. I guess it's hard to explain Afghanistan to people that have never been, but it's a very agrarian society that's, you know, people are living in mud huts and sleeping outdoors at night because it's too hot, and cooking bread on a fire, and it's just kind of a weird place. And I remember landing at FOB Marja, getting off the helo, and there was the master gunnery sergeant, the ops chief, comes up, and he's in his PT gear, and he's got his pistol, you know, they got the whatever pistol strapped on him because they're on the FOB. He's in his PT gear, and he can tell he just looks miserable. He's like, my captain's introducing me to him because he had come on Advon. He's like, hey, this is Sergeant Cramer, the new fire support chief. He's going to be out here doing this and that. He's like, hey, how's it going, man? Oh, sorry, man, I'm pretty messed up right now. And he like ran off. And I guess the day before, like, people got bad chicken or something like that, and 25% of the FOB had like really bad sickness. They were throwing up and shitting everywhere. Like, they couldn't even, you'd see dudes running for the wag bag station and then just stop because they just shit themselves because they didn't make it in time, you know? And I was like, Jesus, like, this is crazy. And then a suicide bomber tried to blow his vest up the next day, and the Afghan shot him, and instead of his vest blowing up, he like caught on fire. And I'm like, what the fuck? This is Afghanistan. All right, well, let's do this. And
yeah, welcome.
I spent most of my time in the command center because I was the fire support chief there. And I was initially butthurt about that because I wanted to go out and get some like more on the ground, like patrolling and doing all this other stuff, which I got to do some, and helo inserts and stuff like that for like certain missions and everything. But most of the time I was in the command center. And like I said, I was kind of bummed about that, but none of my Marines, none of my forward observers that were actually out at the platoon level ever actually got to do a call for fire. I did them all, and I used HIMARS, and I got to my first time getting to do my job in real life was we're sitting in the command center, and I'm sitting there working on my computer. I'm doing something, and I hear someone go, "Hey, is that an IED in place there?" And I'm like, "What?" And I look over, and we have these, we have a big screen TV that has a camera feed from one of the camera feeds that we had, but you could see 3 guys, 2 of them were digging. And they're like, "Oh shit, there's an IED in place here." So I'm like, "Oh crap!" And normally, so I'm going to do a HIMARS call for fire. HIMARS is a 227 millimeter rocket, and normally it's all digital. There's like a chat room, you send it to them and stuff like that. And all my digital stuff went down, like right when I was getting ready to send it. I'm like, "Oh shit," But I had a SATCOM radio that we never used, other than to do radio checks twice a day just to make sure it worked. But I always made sure it had batteries in it, and I always made sure that there was radio checks on it and stuff like that. So when our DigCom went down, I just got on the hooks, and did a regular standard call for fire, like, "This is me, fire for effect, grid, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6." And if your followers are mostly Army, the HIMARS is the same thing as your MLRS. It's that rocket system. So
they're a mixture. I've got all kinds of different weirdos that hang out with me. So
yeah, and if I'm saying anything that sounds confusing, people please feel free to throw it in the comments, and I'll try to clear it up.
Yeah. And again, guys, make sure you let StreamYard know that you can use your thing. We got a couple of people making comments, but they're still showing up as like Facebook user. Hi, Facebook user. Welcome.
Yeah, which user? Yeah. So anyway, so I got that first mission off, and impacts, smoked 2 of the guys immediately. You could see one of the guys kind of stumbling around and trying to pick up one of the other dudes. And my operations officer was like, "Can we do that again?" I'm like, "Yeah, repeat, target number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6." And
can we do that again?
So
that was pretty cool.
Yeah, so we shot another one and smoked that dude. And I was like, "All right, man." And I'll tell you what, like, I was so nervous. Like, when I grabbed the radio, I'm like shaking like this, I'm like, because this is the first time, this is the first time it's like real life, and it's like, those are real enemy and real rockets, and everyone's watching you, like, I'm the guy right now, like everyone no one else in the command center can really do anything. They're just watching me. So I'm standing there with everybody, and when I finished, I'm like, whew, like I got done. And I kind of turn around, and it's like every person that could get into the command center came in so they could watch the strike on the TV, but I didn't realize I had like 20 people standing right behind me. But I was super nervous, man.
Spotlight just hovering on you, everything zooming in.
Yeah, it was an interesting thing, and then the deployment went on, so we did that one. I came back from that deployment, and then I got selected to go to Tactical Air Control Party School, or TACP school, to become a Joint Terminal Attack Controller. And that role, for those that don't know what that is, Joint Terminal Attack Controller is basically a guy on the ground. Think of like a forward observer for artillery, but they talk to the aircraft and they direct munitions. So if you've ever seen like, let me think, Transformers, they got the laser, the dude's out there with the laser and they're dropping bombs. That's super fake, but that's kind of the gist of it. You can't see the laser. It'd be a worthless laser if you could see it. But it's kind of like that, and it was a great job. It was a super stressful job, but you get to go out and conduct your own air show every day because you're telling the aircraft where to fly, what direction to fly, what altitude to fly at, what bombs to drop, and obviously you're working with them, and they'll recommend something if there's a better option. But you're the controller on the ground. You're the guy that's you and the commanding officer are putting your signature on the bomb, saying that target's a legit target.
Yeah.
So I went and became a JTAC, and then I got hit up right after I finished TACP school. JTACs were in high demand and short in inventory. So as soon as I finished school, I got attached to an Afghan National Army advisor team. And I was the team JTAC, and we got sent up to Sangin, Afghanistan, which is pretty infamous place. As soon as I found out we were going to Sangin, I was like, oh shit, like I might not come back from this one, because 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines went there and they lost 25 dudes killed from their battalion, in a 7-month span because of the IEDs and stuff like that. They slayed a ton of Taliban and stuff too. A ton of bad guys got slayed, but it's known to be a shitty spot. So
yeah, Sangin's always been hot.
Yeah, so once we got word we were going there, it was like, all right, man, it's going to be real. And I'm the only dude, like I'm the only JTAC, and I'm new at what I'm doing, so I barely know what I'm doing. So I'm constantly reading my pubs and trying to take in any kind of knowledge I can because, I always told later on I was an instructor for a primer course before we'd send guys up to school. And I would always tell them, like, you have the opportunity to either be a hero or be the guy that fucking kills somebody that you weren't supposed to kill, and the onus is on you, the individual, to come out here and be ready to do your job because no one out here knows what you do or how you do it, and they can't help you. So if you come out and fail at your job, that's completely on you as an individual. So it's a lot of stress, and, but no, it was a crazy deployment. We got there a couple weeks later, the fighting season began. Firefights, they tried to ambush us. They blew up like dump trucks. I remember we were going up Route 611, which is the main route through Sangin. It was like one of the first times we had interaction with, enemy forces. And that road, they're trying to pave it up to Kajaki Dam so that they can put a electric turbine or whatever, fix the dam so that the entire valley could have consistent and solid electricity. But the Taliban don't want them to do that. So these dump trucks, these local civilian contractor dump trucks, I remember we were heading up 611 and one was like flipped over and like on fire or something in the road. And they had attacked them with RPGs and stuff, killed the drivers, and was trying to set up an ambush, block the roads that we couldn't get by. And that was like our first time, like, oh shit, here we go. This is real now. And luckily, my team, I had a great, solid group of dudes with a lot of experience, and we didn't lose anybody from American-wise. We lost a lot of Afghans during that deployment. It was just Sangin's a shitty spot, and it's just one of those things. So after that, I came back, and that's when I got to 1st Anglico out at Camp Pendleton, North Carolina, and immediately went on another deployment after, got there and got attached to my team. Did some training, and then we deployed overseas to float around on the Mew. And I got to go to a lot of cool countries and stuff. Got to go to Hong Kong and Singapore and, Djibouti, which was cool. It's better than being on the ship, but, So, yeah, I did 2 of those deployments.
I got a buddy heading to Djibouti this week, I think.
I tell you what, man, it's probably the best chow hall in the Department of Defense. If not one of the best. Yeah, for sure.
I see contracts come up on USA Jobs all the time for it right now too. They're really building that place up.
It's a pretty solid base. It's not very big. It's kind of long, and there's a lot of training area out in like the Arda Ranges and stuff out in Djibouti. Like you go out and see the local populace and stuff like that. Man, it'd be a horrible place to be at in summertime though, because you're talking about literally one of the hottest places in the world.
Oh, I can imagine.
And it's just.
I thought miserable. Kuwait was bad, but.
Kuwait's bad too. Prior to Djibouti, I think Kuwait was probably the hottest place I'd ever been, which was surprising. It's hot and humid. That's what makes Kuwait real bad. It was like if you're gonna leave the tent to go to chow or do something while you're in Kuwait, it's like, all right, man, we're gonna make a plan, and wherever we go, we're staying there for like an hour. Yeah, like if I'm going to get chow, we're gonna sit at the chow hall for like an hour because I don't want to eat and then turn around and walk back through this shit again. Immediately because at like Camp Buring and stuff, the chow halls weren't closed. Oh,
Buring, no, you'd walk like a mile and a half to get anywhere you needed to go, and the minute you walked out of your tent, I always say it was like somebody standing in front of you with an industrial size like hair dryer, just all the time blowing on you, just
miserable,
wicked, horrible.
I like Camp Buring though. I mean, but my comparison was being on ship. It was either be on ship, which is like a floating prison with scant, like a little bit of food, not enough to like, holy crap, we can eat as much as we want. Like I have an actual bed I can sit up in, because that shit, like when you see the movies where they have them stacked up, that's still the case. Yeah. You're 3 high in most places, sometimes 4 high. And I remember in my berthing area on my first deployment, we had it's got to be less than 2,000 square feet, and we had 110 people in there, and you're talking about 110 dudes sharing the same head or bathroom, and there's like 2 showers and like 2 toilets, so it was just the most miserable conditions I could have. I wanted to go back to Afghanistan. I was like, fuck this. I would much rather go to Afghanistan, than do this again. And then they tapped me to go back on the MEU, go back on a ship deployment as not as an attachment, but as actual like MEU staff, as the on the colonel's staff as the fire support chief. And I told all my leadership, I was like, if you guys send me over there, I'm getting out. I was like, it's not worth my time to sit on a ship for 7 months and just rot away. Because you can't, I'm a JTAC. I can't do training sitting on a ship. What am I going to do? And so it just, to me, those kind of deployments was not worth the probably mental anguish it was causing, like my kid and stuff for me being gone. It's like, how can I justify telling my kid I'm going to leave for 7 months to go stand watch? That's all I'm basically doing unless something happens, which it never does, or never did. So that's why I decided to get out.
Especially with the, the current climate with everything, when you've got the fight going on and then you're just waiting for something different to happen. Yeah.
Well, and, the thing also is that the MEU is a contingency force. Like, hey, we are able to send these Marines into any location within a certain amount of time, and they can self-sustain for 30 days. They can do combat operations for 30 days without having to be resupplied. And there's just so many other, there's not a lot of need for that. Like, where are we going where we need to self-sustain for 30 days? Yes, we did it after September 11th. That was 20 years ago. Like, that's not, because it happened once in the last 2 decades, might not necessarily mean that it's, something that we have to focus completely on. But there's also so many other forces, that are focused on the Middle East and things that are going on over there. So we saw ourselves as like tier 4 of the list of people that are going to get to do whatever mission. Like, if there's an embassy reinforcement, okay, cool. Like, we could send these Marines. However, we have Green Berets that are here, or we have these, Rangers, that are here.
Right.
So it's tough. It's tough going on a deployment and not knowing what your mission is. You're just literally going out and going, well, we'll see what happens. And, so it's crazy. But.
Yeah. I know how that is. We got back from our first deployment. I was up in Fort Wainwright, Alaska.
Okay.
And we went through our deployment 0506, which was originally supposed to be 12 months, got extended to 16. That was a real good time, let me tell you.
Yeah.
So we get back from this deployment, and now 82nd's tapped out like crazy. And with the Army, the 82nd is like the break glass and kind of war guys. They call them GRF, or Global Reaction Force.
Yep.
And because 82nd was so tapped out with deployments, they came up with this new idea. Hey, these striker dudes, we can just throw their trucks on C-130s and put them anywhere in the world within 24 to 48 hours.
Yeah.
And so we went from the 16-month deployment, coming back, think we're going to take a chill pill for a while. Now we're like training, doing ready ups for recalls within 24 hours. All right, everybody, grab your shit, get back to base. Let's go. We're hopping on planes. And we had a couple of those where we're like, oh, shit.
Yeah, the fake recalls. There's nothing worse.
We never went. We just got to do the make pretend for a while, but it was still a pain.
That's the GRF, we called it, I think we called it Global Response Force. I don't know, but
yeah.
The same thing when the MEU comes back from deployment for 30 days or 60 days or something like that after your deployment, you are still on the hook as the Global Response Force. The MEU, the ship that's replacing you, still has to either ship out or get to wherever they're supposed to be, and then they take it over.
Yeah, but they're still doing ready.
There's like a 30 or 60 day period where you're still on the hook, and you could get recalled at any time. And it actually has happened. It happened in 2009. I want to say it was 2009 when the Haiti earthquake occurred. And those guys that were on ship had just gotten home and were going on Christmas leave, which was also their post-deployment leave, and got recalled from Christmas leave to come back and get back on ship. And then they went down to Haiti for like 5 months to help do, recovery and, those different operations down there. We never got recalled, but I do remember I had a douchebag operations officer, and like a week after we got back from deployment, he put out a fake recall, but didn't tell anybody that it was fake. Not even like, your majors and above didn't even know. And I'm telling my guys, like, hey guys, I'm calling them up like, dude, I don't think it's fake, man. I think, get your shit. Like, we're going to have to go back. You need to start making plans to get back. And then they let it ride for like an hour or something. And then they're like, okay, yeah, it was just a drill to make sure everybody would call back. And it's like, dude, you can't be fucking with people's emotions like that, man. Like,
no.
Dudes, this is like real life stuff, man. Guys have come back and just met their kid for the first time, or, things like that. And they're trying to like deal with that. And now you're throwing this like fucked up emotion in there for no reason, I get it. I get it to a point, but the way they did it was pretty shitty.
Not only that, but you guys, everybody's trained at that point. Like, you get recalled when you're at that point, you think like, all right, this is it. We're geared up. Like, let's go kick in some doors and knock some heads off, dudes. It's game time. And, adrenaline starts building. Everybody starts getting their gear together, ready to go. And then you're like, oh, just kidding.
Just kidding.
Just kidding. Like,
there's not a lot of adrenaline. There's not too much because you actually get back on ship. So it's not like you're jumping on a plane and there in 24 hours. You're getting on ship and floating. So you're on ship for a week. Like, oh my God, what am I doing? I'm trying to get into a gym. I'm going to go wait in line for 45 minutes to get a scoop of food. It's like that. So, but yeah, man. That was that's my career in a nutshell. If anybody has any questions, wants me to expand on any of that, I'm more than happy to talk about the things I've done and seen and stuff. I talk to a lot of people, a lot of veterans, and I tell them, I'm like, you have to talk about your experiences. And I'm not saying you have to talk about, maybe the worst thing that's ever happened to you or the goriest thing you've ever seen, but to not kind of tell your stories to people is a shame, because there's no buy-in from the general public. Only 1% of people are joining the military. There's no draft. It's all volunteer. And because of that, there's no buy-in. People don't even know what the military is like. I'm in college, and everyone just assumes that everyone that's been in the military is some kind of PTSD'd out, like, combat vet that's, whatever. And it's like, dude, that's not even 10% of Marines, I think, saw actual combat. You know what I'm saying? Like, you may have been in a combat zone, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's no judgment there, but it's a bad stigma. And I think the way to get rid of that stigma that everyone's crazy and everyone's seen crazy stuff and killed 100 people is to talk about your stories and explain the realities of the military, which the reality is 99% of the time you're sitting around doing nothing or wondering what the hell you're doing, or, like, you don't know. And then there's that 1% where shit gets kind of weird for a little bit. And then,
there's always the running joke, like, with Call of Duty coming out and stuff, like the real Call of Duty, and you guys got doing checkpoints, and sitting there and talking about, well, hey, I really wish I could be back home petting my dog right now. What do you think? Oh, I really wore myself out last night cranking it, but
you talk about everything out there. And that's the good thing about the military is you get so close to people because you spend so much time together. You know everything about each other.
It's ridiculous. Well, especially like you said, being on a boat with a bunch of dudes for 7 months. I don't know how the Navy does it all the time. And you did it for what, 7 months, 8 months for those MU deployments?
Yeah. And they'll get extended sometimes. Luckily, neither one of mine got extended, but I've known guys that have spent. I got lucky because I have, a ground job that, is in need, I guess. I don't know. We went to do an exercise in Kuwait and with some like Royal Marines and some other dudes. And my team got pulled off the ship to go do some close air support training and work out there. And right after we got pulled off the ship got tasking from somebody, and those dudes sailed away. So we were basically stranded in Kuwait, which was totally fine with us because we were setting up ranges. We're at Buren going out to OP-10, out to those ranges and doing close air support training with, attack helicopters and aircraft like 2 or 3 times a week. The other guys that were on ship still, they got pulled to go do tasking, some kind of tasking. I think they needed our Harrier jets to go do some work somewhere. But those dudes ended up being at sea for 115 days straight. And I'm like, dude, we went from Kuwait to Saudi Arabia. We did some workout in Saudi Arabia, and then we flew back to the ship. And when I got back to the ship, I was like completely like bronze, tan, like golden brown. And everyone on ship is like pasty and like just gross. You can almost see their organs through their pasty skin because they haven't seen the sunlight. Because if you don't tell yourself to go outside and get in the sun, you will not even think about it and go 4 or 5 days without ever seeing the sun on ship.
Dudes come out like vampires.
You don't realize how pale you are until you get off ship and you're around other people and you're like, oh my God, we're like a bunch of ghosts walking around.
That's wild.
Yeah. Yeah. But we got lucky, man. It was a good time for us because we got to go do a bunch of work. We got to go at Buring and just eat as much as we want, like chicken, grilled chicken and stuff. These things that sound, simple, but you don't get on ship.
It's no wonder you don't mind Buring. Like, I look at Buring and I'm like, man, that place sucked. But you're like, oh, that place was great.
Our first day there,
compared to a boat.
Our first meal, we sat down in the chow hall, and there was like 3 of us, and we're just like loving it. We're just like, nom, 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 like eating like like it's nothing. And these 2 soldiers were sitting next to us, and they're like, "Where'd you guys come from?" We're like, "We just got off ship." We're like, "This is great, huh?" They're like, "This is like one of the worst chow halls." We're like, "Dude, fuck that, man. This is awesome." Because on ship, stuff starts to rot, and if you're enlisted, if you're E6 and below, you get treated like garbage. 100%, you get treated like garbage, and they pull your dudes to go serve chow to the officers and staff NCOs, like the more senior staff NCOs. They have the chief's mess and they have the officers' wardroom. And you're not allowed to go into either one of those if you're E5 and below, or E6 and below on ship, excuse me. E6 and below, you can't go into either one of those. And we have to task guys to go as like individual augments to go do working parties on ship, but you go for a month. And one of those is like going to do the officers' laundry. You're washing their clothes, you're washing their linens. They have cloth linens, paper towel or napkins for when they're eating. Whereas you're getting like high school shitty tray and like it's crazy, man. You're like, this is absolutely ridiculous that people are being treated the way they are just because they're E6 and below. And it was honestly one of the worst things I experienced in the military, and it was something I spoke out about a lot. And I think a lot of people got annoyed by it, but I'm like, I'm calling a spade, man. This is absolutely garbage. I mean, you have sailors out here that are cutting dudes off from chow, like cutting chow lines early because they want to start cleaning early, but it's like everyone hasn't eaten yet, and no one stops them unless someone like me comes in, because all the leadership, the E7 and above, are in their mess deck, and officers are up top in an area where you're not up in officer country where you're not even allowed to go into. Like if you walk through there, someone will stop you and question you while you're even up there. And it's just garbage the way they treat them on ship. I would never want to. If anyone's listening to this thinking about joining the Navy, you need to consider that. Like that's a reality on ship. Is if you are E6 and below, you're treated like garbage. So.
It's funny. I build their submarines for them now.
Oh, really?
That's my day job.
That's cool. I had a cousin that worked on submarines. He was a nuke guy.
My father was. I got a bunch of buddies that are active down here in Groton.
That's crazy. I can't imagine what it would be like. A lot of those sub guys say they love it though. Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, and maybe it's part of the camaraderie, and you get into it, and there's 2 sides to it. There's some people that are like, man, this sucks. This is the worst thing in the world. Why are we doing this bullshit? Mm-hmm. And then there's other people, they get into it and they just like being around the other dudes. And
for sure,
like being in your platoon, you get close with those guys and you don't want to do anything else but hang out with them. Mm-hmm. Then you get out and you're like, fuck.
Yeah. Fuck. The transition out is, I think, I was talking about this the other day on the podcast. We were saying that probably because I spent 4 years, in the real world before I got out, guys like me probably have an easier time transitioning for the most part, just because, you kind of get it. You understand how the real world works. You've paid taxes, you've paid rent, you've paid bills. If you joined when you were 17 or 18, you went from mom's house to boot camp to being at your unit underneath the, control of NCOs. You're never really making your own decisions. You're never, at some point you do obviously, but not enough to where guys get out. I see a lot of guys get out and struggle. It's because they don't even know how to turn the gas on for their house. If they move in somewhere, like who do they call? How do I get the trash pickup service started. You know, it's these like simple life skills that you don't get in the military because it's just not part of the program. You know, living in the barracks isn't living in an apartment.
Well, you're institutionalized, like you're in prison almost, and it's the same mentality. You know, you get indulged. You get, you know, just surrounded by that whole idea of, you know, everything is laid out for you 100%. And I found myself having problems with that, where I just get into these weird tangents in my life where I just stop giving a shit about everything for a while and doing like the wrong stuff. And I've even said it to myself, like, I need some sort of structure to like get me back into the groove. That's why I started hiking every day. That's why I started getting involved with organizations and stuff, because I need that like structure to keep me going. Otherwise I just get all crazy and I start getting into bad habits, you know?
No, 100%. I know exactly what you're talking about. You know, as you already mentioned, I host the Former Action Guys podcast.
Talk about your podcast a little bit. We haven't talked about that at all.
No, it's cool. I host that. I have my website, jcramergraphics.com. I'm a full-time student, meaning I'm taking 5 college classes this semester. Last semester I was taking 6.
You're nuts.
And I know. I'm just, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm like, you know, I don't know. But I know exactly what you're talking about. I overextended myself last semester, and I was like, dude, I can't take 6 classes. I was supposed to have a minor in history as well, but I dropped one of my classes. I only needed one more class, but I was like, that 6th class could be enough to just, you know, be too much. You know, I'm trying
completely derail you. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause once you, like you said, once you get kind of overextended, you get to that point where you have so much stuff to do, you just don't want to do anything, and you're just overwhelmed, you know, and I get like that, and it sucks. And I try to, you know, with the podcast, it's not a big deal, but with the website, you know, having a clothing website, like, you know, you understand, like dealing with customer issues, you have to be on top of that. And I'll be honest, sometimes I slack a little bit. I won't get back to an email for a day or two. Like I'll look at my computer right now. I have 273 emails that I need to go through right now. And that's not like over a month that those have saved up. You know, that's pretty.
It's like a week.
I have to, yeah, it's less than a week. I have to constantly be going through them, and it's just that kind of like stressor it can become overwhelming. So I know exactly what you're talking about. I will say, you know, if we want to talk transition, I'm not sure what all you want to get into, but if you want to talk like transition stuff, I realized when I told my unit, I was like, hey, if you send me back to ship, I'm getting out. And they're like, well, I mean, we have to, like, the guy that's there is leaving and we have to fill him, and you're the only dude that's available. Yeah. And I'm like, well, okay, that's cool. I'm getting out. So once I made that decision, like I'm getting out, I got off my ass and I started taking college classes while I was in. And I had started to sign up for classes while I was in a couple times, but then every time I was like, oh man, I'm getting ready to go to Iraq. I'm going to be too busy. I'm not going to do it. Oh man, I'm getting ready to go to Afghanistan. I'm going to be too busy. I'm not going to do it. And then I'm an idiot. And then I realized that I had plenty of time to do all those things. I could have, you know, taken advantage. So when I pulled that trigger for 2 years, I just, you know, plugging away 2 classes at a time. They'll let you take 2 classes at a time on your TA, and you can spend up to like $5,000 a year. And I was maxing that out, and I got out and I had like 30 credits left, or 30 credits completed, like 32 or something. And, you know, when I first was probably a year out, I was like, all right, I need to start applying to like actual colleges. And I initially wanted to go to USC, the University of Southern California. And so I put an application in for that, and I shouldn't have done that, because I had zero chance of getting in at that point, because I'd been out of the high school for 12 years or whatever. I'd been out of high school for 16 years at that time. I never took the SATs. I was an average student in high school. My only college classes are what I've been taking in these last 2 years, and they were all online stuff. And I didn't have any kind of mentor or someone that could help me fill out the application and kind of explain what I needed to do, because, you know, that's just not something I knew about. I've been in the Marine Corps for 12 years. But I applied there anyway, and I got rejected, and I was super bummed about that. And I didn't want to come out of the Marine Corps and go to like a community college, because I saw that as like a second-rate school, as a second, you know, like only like weirdos and shit go to the community college. But that's really not the case at all. And going there completely changed my mind. And
Dude, I loved the community college I went to.
I think it's a perfect way for guys that want to go to school to get out and kind of ease into the school life. Because it
Yeah.
is the classes and the education I received at Miracosta College in Oceanside, California is as good as the classes and education I'm receiving at San Diego State University. You know what I'm saying? And but so that's one recommendation is one, take TA if you use tuition assistance and take classes. You have time. Take a writing class, take a basic math class, just get those general, those GE classes out of the way. And then don't be afraid to go to a community college. I went to one for a year, and then I applied to San Diego State University and got right in. And now I've been there for almost 2 years, and it's a good deal for veterans, man. You're getting your GI Bill benefits, you're getting BAH, the housing allowance, and you're also getting an education. And I had someone ask me yesterday or the day before, like, why I decided to go to college. And I'm a journalism and advertising major. Neither one of those fields requires a college degree. If you're a good writer or a good photojournalist, then you can get work. You just got to put yourself out there and talk to the right people. If you're good in advertising, if you're social media marketing, and you've proven that you can get a job without a degree. However, I wanted to, if I decided to go work for another company, I wanted to at least be able to say, hey, I've got this civilian certification completed. And, I'm not just some PTSD'd out veteran. I'm a regular dude. And that was a way for me to validate, that, I guess, to regular people, because I feel like they misunderstand veterans. And, so I just wanted to validate myself and get that civilian credentials. And because, when I decided to do it, I put all my focus, or most of my focus, on going to school full time. I still have a year's worth of benefits left at the end of this semester. So I can still go get a master's degree, and not have to pay for it. And plus, on top of that, the voc rehab and stuff. So yeah, that's, if you're not using your GI Bill, and I'm not saying you necessarily need to use it to go to college, like a 4-year university or something like that. I mean, you can use it at technical schools. You can use it to go take an art class at your local community college, take a photography class or something like that, because just use it. It's a benefit you earned. It's free stuff. You're going to get paid while you're doing it. Like, there's like not many downsides to using the GI Bill.
Yeah. I've got a friend right now that's using it to go learn how to weld.
Yeah.
She's going to welding school. Mm-hmm. There's so many opportunities out there for that kind of stuff.
I know a guy that used it to go to JTAC. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think in our society for so long, people have been pushing degrees and, go to school, get a good job, go to school, get a good job. But, here I am, and I got out, I went to school, and I started going through it, and I realized it just wasn't for me. Like, I got my associates, I started going towards my bachelor's. When I made the transition from the community college to a university, and I was like, holy shit, this is just not me. Like, all right, I got my business.
Okay.
But it was a lot of classes that, here I was 27, 28, 2 deployments, sitting in class with like 18, 19-year-olds. And I don't know, eventually it just got to me. But
yeah, I mean, so when I first got out, that's actually the degree path I was going for. It was business, and I took a semester of business law, business statistics, all these different classes. And I was like, you know what? This feels like all roads point to corporate America.
Yeah.
And I'm already running a business. I'm already doing these things. Obviously you can always improve and stuff like that. But I was like, I don't feel like I'm getting out of this what I want, and I don't think I'm going to use the degree. I don't know if I want to go wear a suit and tie and sit in a cubicle.
That was my big thing too.
So that's when I switched, because initially the reason I wanted to go to USC was because I wanted to get into either their film program or their journalism program, because that's one of the top journalism schools in the country. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to switch. And SDSU offers a program it's under their journalism degree, but it has a focus in advertising. So not only am I getting your basic journalist training and stuff like that, learning AP style writing and things like that, but I'm also learning about advertising. And the way I looked at it was like, when I get out of school And if I decide to work for someone else, depending on if it's a journalism job or an advertising job, I'll just put I graduated with a journalism degree, or I graduated with a, because neither one's a lie. And I have experience in both now. And that's kind of why I looked at that. I mean, for me, I think the dream job would be, and what I was kind of hoping maybe being in journalism would lead to, is becoming a documentarian and being able to like travel around and just, you know, shoot photos and video and kind of like open people's eyes to different things that happen, you know, around the world, around the country, stuff like that.
That's pretty cool. So idea, because my dream job is to just have somebody like you follow me around and videotape me. Like the Duck Dynasty guys, just go hunting and fishing and ride my motorcycle. Yeah. And, you know, I think that's pretty cool. But.
I looked up to see if, I was actually last week. I was googling Meat Eater to see if they needed any crew to help them out when they're filming Meat Eater.
That'd be cool.
I was like, "Fuck, that'd be yeah." I mean, here what I've learned and what I always tell people is that there are regular people doing all these jobs that we look at and go, "That's a cool job. I'd love to do that."
Exactly.
There's a regular dude that gets up, you know, takes a piss, puts his uniform on, shaves his face, and goes into work and jumps into F-22 and flies around doing crazy shit in the air. That's a regular guy, you know? And we look at some of these things like it's unattainable. And it's just, you know, someone told me once in the Marine Corps, it's like a closed mouth never gets fed. And it's like, if I never apply to a job to work at Meat Eater, how am I ever going to get a job to work at Meat Eater? And a lot of people won't even take that first step because they don't think they qualify. It's like, even if you don't think you qualify, fucking shoot for the moon, man. Yeah. You know, like you're never going to get these things that you see crazy or whatever, like amazing opportunities unless you know, ask the question or send in the resume or whatever, you know?
Yeah. The only person that really places limitations on you is yourself.
Yeah. For the most part. Yeah, exactly. You're right.
There's always ways of doing stuff. I mean, you know, granted, you know, I'm not going to be an astronaut or a space shuttle door gunner at this point, but you know, there's stuff similar that I could probably do if I really wanted to. And it's just about going out there and figuring out how to do it, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I always thought, you know, having a podcast would be cool. And I was like, how the fuck do I start a podcast? I had no idea, you know, like record stuff and upload it. And I remember like 10 years ago, probably a guy from my high school, that was the first time I ever heard of a podcast. This guy's like, hey, I started a podcast, check it out. And he put it up on Facebook. And I'm like, what is a podcast? Like, people are just going to listen to these people talk to each other? Yeah. And over time, what
a weird idea, right?
I know. I got into them and I got into it. And I was like, you know, anyone can do it. You just have to have the dedication to do it and be consistent. Like, if you want to be successful, you're going to be as successful as you make yourself out to be. Like,
exactly.
You have to be consistent. You have to have quality, you know, or at least your followers or listeners have to see that you're trying to do as best as you can to put the best quality out there. You know, like we were talking about before the show started, everything I've learned about podcasting and setting up cameras and lights and all this other stuff is from YouTube. You know, I don't know anything about this. And in school, you would think I'd be learning in journalism and advertising how to do this stuff, but you don't. You learn like some theory and some very, very basic like Photoshop skills. You know, it's very disappointing, honestly. And yeah, so everything I've learned has come from YouTube, and it's just, you know, and when I set out to do the Former Action Guys podcast, I initially had another guy that was going to come on the show with me, but he's got a real job. You know, he got out of the Marine Corps and he's a plumber now, and he just couldn't make the time. And I'm like, all right, man, I'm just going to do this. You know, I'm just going to start interviewing people, like, because I hadn't even started the show yet, because I was like, when can we get together to do this first episode? And that's no hit on him, you know, he just didn't have the time. And eventually I just started doing it, and I was like, once I start this, like, is this legit or not? Like, am I really doing this? Because if I'm really doing this, then I need to be ready to start doing this every week. I need to have an episode every week, or whatever schedule I set. I need to be consistent, because once you start getting a following, you know, those people expect that kind of consistency. And
that's the only way to build it too.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. And a lot of people just don't have the want or willpower to do it. And I'm just in a perfect position to try something like this because I'm a single guy in college. You know, my my website is my main source of income. So I work from home, and it's like, this is an easy realm to step into. And, you know, like I was saying earlier about having just average regular people, you know, doing these crazy things. That was kind of my reason for doing the podcast. You know, initially when I first started it, I remember telling my neighbor about it, and we were talking and whatever. And then a couple weeks went by, and he's like, "Hey man, I know this dude down the road who was in the Marines in Vietnam." He's like, "You probably want to interview him." And I'm like, "Oh yeah," like, "That's cool. Like, you should introduce me to him." And it turns out it's this guy I used to see walk down the road every day. This old dude. I lived by the beach in Oceanside, and I would see him almost every day walking down to the beach. And I was always just like, "Oh, this is some old surf bum," you know? And once he came over and he introduced me to him, this dude was in Vietnam. He was an F-4 Phantom pilot, got shot down, and like crashed into the canopy as he was ejecting, and the branches was like hitting him in the face, and he lost almost all his entire eyesight. And he ejected, got recovered, you know, and now he's just a dude, you know, walking down the street. But it's like, had I not been introduced to him or talked to him, I would have just assumed he's just some beach bum that just walks around and like enjoys his day or whatever. But in reality, this dude's a guy that's been shot down in combat, you know, and like he's blinded from that experience, and he's done these crazy things, but no one knows about that. And it's a shame, you know, especially when guys come onto the show. I tell them, you know, it's a shame that one, people don't hear it, but especially your families, you know, like I think people that have done, if you think you've done something or you just want to share your you know, your life, like go on a podcast and get it recorded. That way, in 100 years, your great grandkids can be like, "Oh, he was on this podcast. Let's pull it up. This is what great grandpa sounded like. He talks about being in the war." You know, these are like his history that's being saved. It's like family history, and I think it's important for people to, you know, to have that. So,
yeah. Well, you know, it's one of those things. You keep saying somebody's name and you keep talking about their story, and you know, they continue to live on after their death, you know. And I really fantasized about that, you know, when I was in the Army. I was an infantryman. I'm like, you know, your deeds will live on forever in history, you know, watching Spartans and all of that stuff, 300. But then you go through it and you're just like, I just did some normal stuff. I didn't do anything crazy, but you know, this is the way that a lot of those guys who, and it may not be important to you at the time, but like you said, down the road, your families are, you know, guys from Vietnam, World War II and previous, they never really wanted to tell their story because of experiences they went through, or they just, you know, maybe didn't think it was a cool story. But then afterwards, you know, pictures get brought up and they start talking about, "Oh, you know, Grandpa so-and-so, he was in the war." And it's like, "Well, what did he do?" And they're like, I don't know."
Yeah.
And your families
shame, right?
care about that stuff. You know, that's history. And it's cool that we have this opportunity now to be able to record and, you know, videotape and talk with these people and being able to get that out there.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's huge.
Yeah, that's why that's one of my biggest driving factors, I think, is just being able, the podcast, I talk about myself sometimes, you know, just to relate to the guest or to add to a story, you know, let them, maybe they hadn't heard something. So I'll you know, I'm sure my listeners have heard some of the same stories a few times. I guess it's going to happen after 100 episodes. But for me, it's like, it's about them and their story and getting that information out there, because what we see is like you said, like, "Oh, we just did regular stuff." I mean, we take that for granted. We take some of the things we did for granted, because
to somebody else that might be completely different.
It's completely crazy. You know, I mean, look, regular civilians get all excited about seeing boot camp videos. And the most exciting things that happen in boot camp is like rappelling down the wall, or, you know, going to the gas chamber or something like that. But people that have never experienced that see that and like, "Man, that's crazy. You stood in a gas chamber with a gas mask on? Like, that's crazy."
Or doing the bayonet course. That was like one of my big things. Like going through the bayonet course. I always thought about that going up to boot camp. I'm like, "Oh, I can't wait to do that. That's the coolest thing in the world." Yeah.
Stab that tire.
And you go, and then you go through and you're like, "Man, this sucks. This is bullshit."
Yeah.
But
I mean, it sucked for sure. I went to Paris Island, South Carolina in the summertime. It was miserable.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just we take it for granted because we do so much crazy stuff all the time that some of that stuff becomes common. It becomes regular. Oh, we're gonna go rappel today. Okay, whatever. Oh, we're gonna go. I don't know what. We're gonna go shoot grenades. Out of the grenade launcher. We're gonna shoot rockets. We're gonna. I'm over here. I got 100 flyby videos of A-10s and Cobras and everything else where I've had them come and do shows of force for me and stuff like that.
That's wicked.
That's not an average thing. And that to me, I think that's one of the main reasons guys get out and they have a hard time adjusting, because they went from doing all these crazy cool things to now being back in like mundane society. And they got to find something that gives them purpose and, gets them excited to wake up in the morning and stuff like that. And, everybody's different. So
if I could just go to the range and like shoot a 240 all day, I think I'd be good.
Yeah, that's probably one of my biggest like regret, or not regrets, but like I miss the most. One of the things I miss the most is shooting on the government's dime. Taking my team of like 20 guys out and be like, hey, we got 20,000 rounds, guys. Let's go shoot. Yeah.
Now it's like, oh, bang, cha-ching, bang, cha-ching.
Yep.
Especially now with the way prices are and the ammo shortages and everything.
Man, I'm in California.
Yeah.
I don't even know the last time I bought ammo. I haven't even really shot very much lately, or at all lately, because it's just, I'm not sure if I could replace the ammo I shot,
Yeah.
So yeah, California is a trip though. You have to do background checks to get ammo and stuff. Like, it's crazy.
We're getting the same way out here in Connecticut. You got to have your pistol permit or your ammunition eligibility certificate. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I have a buddy that lives in Connecticut that talks about that, how it's kind of crazy, but
it's horrible.
Billy Hayes said, both my grandfathers were in the Navy as gunners. I used to hear some of their crazy stories. Hey, there's some solid Navy people. I have friends still that were Navy folks and stuff like that, but for the most part, I did not like the Navy. I didn't like their work ethic a lot of times. And it was a bad experience for me. A lot of the Navy people didn't like us. They saw us as invaders in their own property, like, oh, fuck. 1,000 Marines just got on ship. The chow line just went exponentially
Here comes
longer.
the Marines.
Yeah, honestly, my first MEU deployment on ship, our first couple weeks, you'd have like Navy guys like walking down the P-way and shoulder check you or something like that, because they were like, it's like, what are you doing, bro? Like, I don't know. It put a bad taste in my mouth. I do like some Navy people, and I appreciate the experience of getting to go on a Navy ship. I think it'd be cool to do like for a week or so, but to go on for 7 months is a little much.
No, I'm all set. The only time I want to go on a boat's when I go fishing. That's it.
I mean, I've done a cruise before. That was amazing. That was a great time. And then
I am not like Speedo material. I'll rock it, but
yeah. Yeah. No, I feel you.
No, the wife always talks about going on a cruise, maybe after COVID. Actually, they're doing a Reverent Warrior cruise this year sometime. I forget when it is. I figured that would be pretty wild. 75 to 90% of the boat all being, veteran active duty people. That'd be a good time. Oh my God.
They're starting up cruises again. If they're doing these like vaccinated cruises, you have to show your CDC card that you've been vaccinated. That you
really.
I'll tell you what, man. Being on a cruise, I went on a 6-day cruise or something like that for a wedding down in I guess the Bahamas, around that area, and that's the best service I've ever had. If you're talking about, I'd come back from the pool or something, go in my room, shower real quick, change, throw the towel down, walk out, come back 5 minutes later, and the dude's already in there cleaning it, and they know your name. Like, you have the same server for dinner every night, so they know your name and they know what you want to drink. And it's just such a weird. It was a really good time. A lot of people hate on cruises, but I had a great time going down to Barbados and shit like that.
You just talking about this makes me want to go do it now. Like,
it was a good time. A lot of people hate on it and think it's all old people, but there was an ice skating rink on our ship. I mean, what the fuck? How big is this thing?
Hey, I just saw on Facebook the other day. There's one for sale on Marketplace. We can just all put in together and buy a cruise ship. Yeah, it's got a. It's got a roller coaster on it or something. That'd be wild.
Oh my God, that'd be insane. Get jostled off of that.
So I just looked at the time and I got to go to work.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I work second shift right now. Yeah, you're my longest show so far.
How long have we been going?
Thank you for that. We're at an hour 13 right now. That's pretty wicked. Yeah.
I thought it was like 45 minutes maybe. Okay.
No. We just keep talking. That's
I'm
you know
used
what?
to going.
That's a
I'm
great
used to
thing about
going
this.
I'm used to going 2 hours plus. I usually tell my guys I'm going to cut them off around 2 hours, just because I know a lot of people won't make it that far into the podcast. So
Yeah.
that's kind of that's what I'm used to. But yeah, man, wrap it up.
Cool. All right. Yeah, we didn't even get into any of the questions I had, but you know what? It's fine, because the great thing about this is just talking and having a great conversation, especially bringing your experience to the table with everything you've done. I talk about patriotism, and like that's it right there. Like everything we just talked about wrapped up. Like this is America. And that's what I love about talking to veterans and bringing veterans onto the show. They understand Americanism more than anybody else, because they wrote that blank check, up to and including, your life, and they do it again most of the time. That's what I love about you guys.
It's for sure,
Each
man.
and every one of you.
Well, if you ever want to have me come back on, man, just let me know. Hit me up, and we'll set something up, and we can get into the actual questions and not so much about me.
It's all good, man. And definitely, we're booked out pretty far right now. Or likewise, if you ever want me to come on Former Action Guys podcast and I can just talk about myself for once, I've got 1 or 2 stories at least,
we'll
at least 1 or 2, so no shit. There I was.
Yeah.
Knee deep in hand grenade pins.
Everybody's got 1 or 2,
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But real quick, I'll just plug myself. For the followers, thanks for having me on. Thanks for the people that are commenting and stuff. That's pretty awesome that you got this where you set up where you got multiple platforms streaming on multiple platforms at once. I'll have to look into something like that. You can check out my podcast at Former Action Guys podcast. I'm on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I have 98 straight 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. You can check out my website, jcramergraphics.com. I do, like you, custom clothing and stuff like that. So I don't want to steal any of your business, but feel free to hit me up there. And if you want to see me rant about politics and stuff like that, you can hit me up on Twitter. Number 4 MER Action Guys. That's kind of it for me. And then obviously all Instagram at JCramer Graphics and at Former Action Guys on Instagram. Both, you can check both of those out. Feel free to shoot me a DM if you have any questions about what we talked about today, or if you have any questions about fire support or the Marine Corps. I always try to respond. It may not happen today or the day you send it, but I'll respond at some point.
Cool, man. Justin Cramer, Former Action Guys podcast, jcramergraphics.com. Thanks for coming on.
No problem.
Have a great day, dude.
Hey,
keep being awesome. All right. So for everybody else out there, I've got one more question for you. Do you love America? Damn right you do.